So I get calls all the time from HR professionals who are really interested in solving the problem of workplace bullying, and they're asking me how to get leaders on board for resolving this problem and creating a better environment. And so some of the tips I give those folks about why this is important is that, one, there is a ton of academic research that workplace bullying causes people to feel depressed, anxious, stressed out. That stress causes physical problems. They can't eat, they can't sleep, they're fighting at home with their families. And so I feel like organizations are set up to help people thrive. People rely on organizations for their livelihood. They're there to get a paycheck, to build their self-esteem and their self-concept. So if they're going to work every day being ripped to shreds, the organization is doing their employees a disservice. And I honestly think it's a moral and ethical responsibility for an employer to ensure that people feel healthy and safe at work. So if you're allowing something like bullying to happen, you are essentially allowing your people to get anxiety, depression, stress, and there's a ton of research that it even causes PTSD. So it's really important that we solve it. On top of that, of course, we're always interested in the economics and ROI of things that we do. And solving the problem of bullying, it does have a big ROI. There's a ton of research that people who feel bullied do not produce as well because they're sidetracked, they're talking to other people about it, their customer service isn't as good. And in fact, I can use myself as an example. I got into the world of workplace bullying because I was being bullied as a director of HR. And over the course of 5 years, the amount of time I spent talking about it with other people increased and increased and increased. And by the end of my employment there, I was probably spending half my day just venting because we were all so frustrated with it. So you got an office of 50 people, and half of us are just constantly venting about how we feel. So that's expensive. So take that example and realize how it really does affect productivity. In terms of steps to solve workplace bullying, there's a few different ways to go about it. One is to provide just simple training. Training's an easy, low-hanging fruit item. But don't provide anti-bullying training or harassment prevention training. What you need to provide is your managers need the tools to step in when they witness incivility, because incivility escalates to bullying. They need to know how to manage behavior and performance. So not just performance. They need to know how to coach an individual who's not performing via bad behavior. So some simple training programs to give managers tools on resolving this within their own departments, and then company-wide trainings on things like civility, respect, assertiveness, stepping in for each other, being an upstander as opposed to a bystander. So those are all some simple trainings that you can offer. Training's a good low-hanging fruit. I also recommend that you definitely invest in those individuals who are bullying but seen as valuable. So I know a lot of times organizations allow somebody to stay in an organization because they bring in a lot of money or they have the right relationships or whatever. But that person is causing angst, right? So as valuable as they might be with the money that they bring in with their customers, for example, they're costing the organization a lot in the anxiety and stress and all of that they're creating. So you have to think about that, offset their costs, with their income. But so I get it. You want to keep those people, but you cannot allow them to just go around acting however they want. So definitely coaching those individuals. And that coaching has to go through a process of, doing a 360 so that they can see how they're really perceived, because it's not enough for HR to just say, hey, people perceive you as too abrasive or aggressive. They need to see it. They need to see the comments of their peers. So do a 360 and then use that to coach. A bigger, sort of more macro step to solving the problem of bullying is ultimately creating a positive work environment. And you can't do that with just a policy or just a performance management system. If you truly want to end workplace bullying and harassment and discrimination and workplace violence, all of the horrible things that go on at work, the answer is a positive culture that doesn't tolerate that kind of behavior. And so, when I work with clients, we go in, we do a climate assessment to figure out where are the problems, what are the problems, how prevalent are the problems, and then we literally create an action plan to solve the problems that we discover in the climate survey. And then we redo the climate survey a year later to see how we're doing, and we keep building action plans. We build action plans with employees because usually in an environment where there's bullying, there's no trust between leaders and employees. And so we use the employees as a way to give them a voice. And so we meet with these employees and come up with a strategic plan for solving the problems. So those are some of the big kind of high level tips for solving this. I guess finally, implementing a healthy workplace policy is something I really see as important. So a lot of academic researchers, for example, will tell you to implement an anti-bullying policy. I disagree with that. I think a corporate policy handbook is already full of a million things that people should not do and what would happen if they did them. If you're late, you get disciplined. If you're harassing, you might be terminated, whatever. Give employees a list of behaviors you do want from them and hold people accountable to that. You can't hold people accountable to a nothing, to a don't. You can only hold people accountable to a do. So creating a healthy workplace policy that really speaks to this is what we expect the behavior to look like here in this workplace, and holding people accountable. And to that end, use your core values. That's another great way to build a positive work environment. I'm sure your core values include things like respect and diversity, and I'm sure there is no room for bullying in your core values. So if you hold people accountable to the core values and start to inspire people to live them every day, that is another great tool to solve bullying. So lastly, I'll say, please do not do an anti-bullying training just to try to resolve the problem of 2 or 3 people. I get calls all the time. Can you do a training on bullying? We've got a couple leaders who bully. Maybe the training will help. And the answer that I give is always no, because all that happens is everybody gets more frustrated that they have to sit in a training knowing that, Bob and John over there are the real bullies. So please don't use training as a solution. It's a step, but it's certainly not going to solve the problem. The only way a training will work is if the culture supports anti-bullying and if the organization is willing to step up when people do bully. So those are some of my tips.